Hello, this is Paul, and welcome to my podcast, the Paul Higgins Podcast, episode number 652. And today I talk to Gemma Price from HubGem. And you're going to learn lots from Gemma. She's absolutely brilliant, but in particular, how she identified a massive gap in the education sector. She discovered £7 million of leads sitting in a drawer and turned it into an insight, then produced her own business in a thriving vertical of education. Why she chose to specialize in one sector, schools, colleges, universities, instead of going broader, and how that decision became her unfair advantage, and also how she could have strayed many times, but she didn't, and how she built a remote team of 20 people and created one of the world's happiest workplaces. Yes, she's got the rewards to prove it, or how she can help you grow without sacrificing culture. Gemma Price started HubGem in 2019 after working in the education and marketing and realizing schools desperately needed modern CRM systems given her first-hand experience. She's now CEO of a top 3% global HubSpot partner and has been recognized dozens of times for building exceptional company culture. What I'll do now is hand you over to Gemma Price from hubgem.co.uk. Great to have you here, Gemma.
Oh, great to be here.
Yeah, well, you've got an incredible story, so I can't wait to dive into that more. But why don't we kick off with currently, who's your ideal client and what problems you love to solve for them?
So we specialize, we're very verticalized at HubGem. So we work with the education sector. So typically we're talking senior leaders. That might be like a director of marketing or admissions or a head teacher, a CEO in a school, college, university.
Yes. Yeah, great. So you do the three. Did you start with all three?
Yeah, I'd say we have a large section of our audience is the independent schools market. I think it's a very unique segment to work with, but I think we've always had the blend of the three, just weighted more towards the schools maybe.
Great. And the independent, what's the mix of independent versus government in the UK?
Overall, the majority of schools in the UK are obviously government run schools, but in terms of who we work with, because of the nature of what we do, that it really is the fee paying, the independent schools, because if you're a government school, you don't really need to market. So we don't really have a big audience in those.
Yeah, great. Well, we call them private schools here. I don't know if that's the same over there.
Yeah, they're called private schools to everybody except those who work in or with them, who call them independent schools. It's terrible for SEO.
I bet. And what are some of the problems that you solve?
Yeah, so it's really about streamlining marketing and admission. In education, admissions really is sales with some added bells and whistles. We help them to really streamline this process because the nurturing journey, let's say you're a school marketing to a family, not only is it a huge financial decision for a school, to sign your child up to a private school, but it's also your child. So it's quite a big consideration. I think it's super important, that lead nurturing element, which could take years.
Yeah, and I know that we're still getting the glossy brochures from a couple of private schools that my son never ended up going to. But I'm just, each time I think, the wasted marketing spend here must be enormous. But nothing comes in my inbox, on my email inbox. They need you over here. And I know you've got an amazing story of how you the light came on and you thought, okay, I need to go and solve this. Tell us that story.
So my background prior to launching HubGem, I was employed in the education sector within marketing teams. So I started off working in a further education college, and it was great. They were very, I'd say they were a little bit more commercial than schools. They have sales teams, business development, and bigger budgets as well. And so I had maybe gotten used to working in that environment. Then I was looking for another opportunity, and I found a job working in a private school. I took that. I eventually worked my way up to be director of marketing and admissions. But one thing that really struck me was how much they needed tech, more than I realized at the time, if I'm honest. I got to my desk expecting, a computer that worked would be great. That'd be the starting point. I did, but it was very, there there was a lot of spreadsheets. There was a lot of very disjointed. It was, and I was there going, right, I'm going to make an impact. I want to start digital marketing. I want to really start, let's find, who am I emailing? Who am I contacting? And so when I first started, I was just on the marketing side. And I remember going to the lovely lady in admissions and saying, right, who do I need to, who can I contact? Tell me a little bit. And she said, oh, don't worry. We've got families we're speaking to. Great. That's a good sign. And then I kid you not, she out of her bottom drawer pulled out a stack of paper, a chunky stack of paper. I started to get a little nervous, and it was basically one sheet per child inquiry to the school. And this was it. This was the entire lead, all of the leads for a school. Bearing in mind, we're talking a not small amount to study at one of these schools. The nurturing, I would say, is very important. And basically the process was that, if I followed up with someone, I'll put a tick in the corner of the page. And if I followed up twice, I'll put 2 ticks. And I think there was this moment for me where, coming from further education that in the greater world are still probably not at the very cutting edge, but was certainly more ahead of independent schools. It was, on the one hand, I was excited because what an opportunity to really improve things, but also that little bit of panic that, it's my job to get people into the school, speaking to the school. And it was, I worked out then, I wanted to know, okay, how seriously should I take this pile of paper? Do I just start again, right? Get some ads running and get out there and look at what we can do. But when I worked out, if I looked at the average lifespan of a child at the school and the amount they'd be paying, there was somewhere in the region of £7 million worth of business in this pile of paper, and felt a little bit sick, but decided I'm going to have to do something with these. So had to manually digitize them all, had somebody to speak to.
Yeah, incredible. And I think you framed it, if you give me the resources, I can get you a share of that 7 million. Is that how you ended up not just digitizing it, but also getting a system?
Yeah, I think I'd been battling a little bit with the fact that I just didn't have the resources I needed to make an impact. And I really wanted to make an impact. I really, could see the potential. The reason I worked the figures out on this pile of paper was so that I had a business case to go to the leadership team and say, look, we need to do better. This is where it's at. Here's what we could be doing. By the way, there's technology out there that would make all of this so much easier, because, and I still see this in schools all the time, you've got small, very busy teams, and they care a lot, and they all care about doing a good job. But they're not from the tech space. They're not even from a commercial space. Even the word sales can feel very uncomfortable to them. I think it was really important that when I went to the leadership team and said, look, this is the potential, I have some ideas, and then, they see the need.
Great. And when did you think, hang on, I need to go and do this for others?
So I went off work to had my daughter. So she's 6 years old now. And I do think it gives you an element of perspective when you take a break. And I went back to work when she was about 6 months old. And I remember I think I was just feeling like this is not quite what I want to be doing. I think I've realized as well, I got back to an inbox of people emailing me saying, you're the school that uses HubSpot. How's it going for you? That was something I was excited to talk to people and to tell them about what we were doing, because I knew that it was quite uncommon in schools to do that. And I wanted to inspire them. And then I guess it sort of reframed my priorities a bit, in that I wanted to be doing more of that and less of the, there's lots of lovely things working in a school. There's also lots of less lovely things. There's, it's a very, you're in the minority in a support team in that, most people are the academics. So it's quite unusual to be marketing in a school. And I also wanted more flexibility. I really wanted to be able to work on my own terms and spend more time with my family. I had to look for something different.
Yeah, brilliant. And did you have a roster or a list of potential opportunities, or did you step out and then go and find the opportunities? Which way did it go?
I hadn't decided immediately to go down a start my own business route. As I said, I'd always been employed, so it was quite a jump for me. The first thing I picked up the phone to some contacts at HubSpot that I had, and said, please, can I have a job? At the time, there was no UK office, didn't want to relocate to Ireland. It was a case of, okay, let's look what else there is out there. And that's when I discovered HubSpot Partners. And so I made the decision. I looked at what other partners were doing and decided that I wanted to do something specific for the education sector. And so, yeah, took the leap and start my own. It was terrifying going from the security of a reasonably good salary. But I was driven by this, like, knowing that the sector really needs this and I know how to do it. I can speak the language. I started off with a couple of connections in the sector that I had just from attending events, and that helped. But then it was just a lot of hard graft to build up that audience and get myself out there.
And have you ever had, it's not opportunities, probably the wrong word, but have you ever thought of going outside of the vertical being education? Have you ever thought, well, maybe, I could make more money, I could do whatever if I expanded it?
Yeah. So when I started, it was actually education and nonprofits. I also had some nonprofit expertise that I, again, thought, oh, that's another area I know. And then what happened, the education side was so much more repeatable in terms of the services. I could really tailor the services around it, whereas nonprofits can literally be in any sector and doing anything. It's just a financial model as much as anything. Yeah, there was a moment. So I started the business in 2019. And then in 2020, obviously the world changed quite dramatically. And I was a little bit worried. And I did think, should I be diversifying? Have I cut my slice too small here? Is there enough that's going to last? I think there was a few things in my mind whenever I explored this idea of branching out. I looked at the feedback I was getting from my early customers, and all of them were saying, we just love that you know the space. We don't feel like we have to explain our business to you. You just get it. And all I'd started getting 5-star reviews, and it was really starting to build. And I thought, I don't know other sectors. So yes, I know HubSpot, and I'm sure I can work with others. I can apply it. But actually, I know that this is a sector that needs it. I know actually COVID really shone a light on that, because nobody could work. If paper's all in everyone's drawers and you're locked out the office, then there's a problem. I just had to trust the process and lean into my expertise, which then became my main differentiator, and it was upwards from there.
Yeah, and just a reminder, you're listening to Gemma Price. This is episode 652. And if you've been listening for a long time, you've heard me bang on about a niche, however you want to say it. And, I do think Gemma is a great example of being patient doing it. And, I know when I used to work at Coca-Cola and had different client portfolio, I would go and work in their stores. So I'd go and work in their stores. I'd see it firsthand. And then when I sat in a senior meeting with the CEO or head of procurement or whatever, they sort of knew that he actually understood what he said. And, that famous saying by Covey is seek first to understand before you're understood. I think if you're looking here and you're thinking, well, what niche should I do? Take Gemma's lead and do the one that you're passionate about and the one that you've got really good prior knowledge. And we'll talk further in a moment, but it certainly worked out for you. And then, you start to expand it beyond yourself, right? Take us to that moment when you first decided to hire people. When was it? And what was your decision-making process when you did that?
Yeah, gosh, I remember it well, just the nerves that I felt, because it's one thing, when I set out and started the business, I thought, if I can just earn the equivalent of my full-time salary,
Yes,
then I'll be okay. Even if it was a little bit less, I'll be okay because I'll have flexibility. And I hadn't got this grand plan of, growing this big company or anything like that. But I did have the passion and the determination. So yeah, we had COVID at the start of 2020, and then it was sort of the end of 2020 when the world was trying to find some sort of new normal to move forward. And people were realizing that they were going to need to work a bit smarter.
yes,
And that had then started to accelerate. So when things were quieter, I just focused on my own marketing. I didn't really have much else I could do. So I wrote, I think it was 80 blog articles in 1 month back when that worked. But yeah, so then what happened is people started to go back in the office. They were discovering the content I've written
yes.
and started to find me. And I was having lots of conversations. And I just had this moment of like, okay, I set out to be a solo consultant and I'm doing that now and it's going well. But I don't want to turn business away. It just felt so counterintuitive to do the marketing and then not be able to service, right? So I had to make a decision. The only way to manage it would be to hire. And so I took my first employee on, it was just over a year after starting the business. I actually hired someone that I'd worked with previously who I knew had experience in a school.
Yes.
And that was, again, just helped us to really double down on that niche. It was scary. I was thinking in my head, but I don't have her whole year's salary in the bank yet. And, and I think I had to become a little bit more resilient in the unknown.
Yes.
Because when it was just me, the risk was, lower. If I didn't pay myself, we'd struggle, but I could go and get another job, or I could go and do something else if I needed to. I had a little bit of reserves, not much. I really took hiring somebody very seriously because suddenly, I'm paying their mortgage. And I don't know, it was the best thing I did, but I do remember feeling super anxious and just thinking, I don't have that whole year's salary in the bank yet. And then I think over time, you just get a little bit more used to navigating that.
Yeah. And I think, I often say to people, you just, if you trust yourself, others will trust you. So sometimes you just got to go ahead of revenue or go ahead of what's comfortable. And to be honest, if you're not in that uncomfort zone, you're probably best to go back and get a job. The worst case I see is where people, effectively just work way too much and they would be better off back into a job. So that's great. And how big's the team now?
Yeah, so we're around 20 now. We've been slightly more, we've been slightly less. I think 20 is like our sweet spot. It's incredible. The team are the best thing about the company because they make it and they bring so much.
Yes.
I'm incredibly proud of what we've built.
Yeah, and where are they located?
So we're a fully remote company. That was one of my plans. As I say, I wanted flexibility with a young family. I also just really like working in my slippers most of the time. And I'm not a fan of commuting. Although I like to talk, I am an introvert and I really love my own space. But it was interesting because when I started the company and was fully remote, it was pre-COVID. And people were like, our clients were like, you're going to have to come in person. And obviously I would do for clients, but it was like it blew their minds that I didn't have an office. And then you fast forward a year and it's so normal.
Yes.
So as a team, we're based all around the UK. We have one team member in Portugal. Well, a little bit jealous of her, to be honest. But yeah, it worked really well for us.
Yeah, fantastic. And it was interesting. I was even talking to friends that are still in corporate on the weekend and they were, I said, what's the amount of travel that you're doing now? One works at the, Australia's largest bank. And he was like, look, we hardly travel anymore. And we all used to have cars to go out and meet clients. We don't do that anymore. So, yeah, I think that post-COVID, it's been great for the industry, for all people. And now with AI, I suppose it's even more so. I know that you do a lot of internal work with your team and culture, which we'll get to in a moment. But I know you also are really passionate about the change management piece. So, you're not giving people just HubSpot, you're actually helping them make the change. Just talk us through some of the key fundamentals that you see are critical in that change management piece.
I think if you take implementing HubSpot as a project and, immediately there's lots of complexities and lots of unique things that will come up with any given client. You've obviously got whatever existing tech stack they've got and how that's going to play out. And you've got the different team dynamics and who's ready to adopt and who isn't. And you've got some people that will love their spreadsheets, some that will love paper in a bottom drawer, and you'll have others that are chomping at the bit to get stuck into a new system. I think it's really important when you go in to work with any client, and especially implementing technology for them, is to recognize that we're dealing with humans. The technology is incredible, and it is one small part of the picture. You could have, I always say, it's like having a Ferrari in the garage. If you don't show someone how to actually start the engine or even show them where the garage is, then you've got a problem. And some people will not want to open that garage. I think it's really important, and we do a lot of this in the sales process actually, is really just getting to know the people, not the job titles, not the, this is what we do and how we do it. We know some of that, obviously, but really what is it you're struggling with in your job? What is it that really lights you up? What do you wish you had more time to do? What is it like? We need to speak to the humans. And actually, when you get beneath the surface, even the most reluctant diehard spreadsheet fans, challenging them with a CRM, let's take it away from the technology. It's not about you're going to use HubSpot because someone's made the decision. Instead, it's how can we, and we really make sure we build these relationships very carefully with our clients, but how can we help you to want to do this? And what is it that you're really struggling with? And we take it very seriously and like, how can we help you to make this possible? Because the biggest barrier to innovation, the biggest barrier to creativity, to teamwork, to basically anything that's positive and super productive in any workplace is the humans and establishing psychological safety. You need a scenario where people are really feeling seen, heard, their voices need to matter, and they need to feel able to say, actually, I struggle with this. And that's really important because people might feel vulnerable to say, this is what I'm struggling with every day if they're in an environment where that's not talked about. So we just go in and make the space to listen to that so that we understand how to help.
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree more, and I think the analogy of the Ferrari is a good one. Where sometimes what we do as technologists is we bring them a Ferrari when they need a Vauxhall or whatever the equivalent is. You know, they don't need everything all at once, and it's a graduation, and it's hard for us sometimes because we are so used to it that it's hard to go backwards and think, well, hang on, what's their perspective? Like, where are they at the moment? And I know that I used to struggle when I was in your shoes when I ran my consultancy because I love change. I'm just constantly, and my team, the number one feedback they ever give me is, Paul, can we just go slower on the change piece, right? Like, you know, I'm about to lock down one thing and then we're the next. So I used to struggle when I'd go into an organization, and Coke, where I used to work, was very fast paced as well. That was me. I'd go into an organization and I had to meet them where they're at. And it sounds like you do it really well. And that's once again going back to that vertical solutions because you know them, jobs, you know the culture of the schools, you know all of that. So it helps you to meet them where you are, which is, I think, another huge benefit of the team. And as far as like, if you look at revenue over time, is majority of the revenue that the schools give you upfront, like in other words, for the setup, and then it's lower support, or is it more even over a period of time?
It really depends on the client, to be honest. Certainly with schools, that's mostly the case. So it's a much bigger onboarding piece, and then they go on to support plans, but it's lower. We often work with, our customers for multiple years until they just are like, we know what we're doing, we've got it all, and then they'll come back if they need something. But I think when we go a little bit up market, so we're looking at maybe colleges, universities, then we've had some that are much bigger on the sort of more retainer side and the support side. They essentially see us as their CRM manager. So implementation, onboarding is still our biggest project. But I think for the bigger organizations, they see a lot more value in having the continuity of working with us as their CRM managers. If you look at how rapidly HubSpot, and I imagine all the other solutions as well, I think HubSpot, there's been something like 1,800 new features in the last year, 200 released at Inbound a couple of weeks ago in San Francisco. We have to keep on top of this. If you're a university and you're paying a lot of money and really getting a lot from HubSpot, keeping on top of all of them things, you don't want a team member learning it all and leaving. So I think the bigger you get, the more money we see from retainers.
Great. That makes sense. And for your own internal team, what are some of the things that you do that are unique, fostering that culture?
Yeah, so this is something that I really am very, very passionate about. We've been named one of the world's happiest workplaces, and we've been recognized dozens of times at all sorts of levels for our culture. And that's because I really, really cared about creating an environment where team members, I want to hear how they're doing. I want to hear, are they struggling? Okay, let's work together. I see that as a challenge we can overcome together rather than that's a you problem. So I think for me, the second I decided to employ, I decided that I was going to do things differently. I mentioned briefly, but, working in education, there's loads of wonderful things. I would say culture is not always one of them. And I still see this with my clients. It does vary. They can be quite pressure cooker environments. And if you take like the end of term, the kids are climbing the walls. So the teachers are burnt out and then they will be coming to support staff. So it sort of escalates. And then the summer holidays, everyone breathes and resets ready for September or whenever the start of term is. It was really important for me that I created an environment where people could turn up as their whole self to work,
Yeah.
and feel completely supported. I think as well, having this environment, as I say, it leans into creativity and innovation, and it is actually the thing that allows us to move quickly and not have too much resistance to change. And I did realize very early on, I lost one of my very early team members to a bigger agency. Very, very common. And I realized, look, I can't. The size that I was as a company and now cannot compete like for like on salaries with the much bigger agencies.
Yes.
So I need to offer something different. And I do think that culture gets bandied about a lot. People think of it as, beanbags in the office or dress down Fridays or whatever. They're perks. And I'm not saying some people won't be motivated by them, but a lot of people aren't.
Yes.
For most people, culture really is about being seen, being heard, being valued. And it's about being aligned to your purpose, knowing the work that you're doing makes a difference. So it's something I'm incredibly passionate about. And yeah, I think it's something we've done very well.
Yes, brilliant. I remember, can't remember the guy's name. I can see his face, but he was from the London Business School and he had a book, Coffee, I think his name was. It wasn't spelled as the bean, but he talked about the fact that leaders don't pick followers, followers pick leaders. And it really resonated with me. And I think, it definitely stuck with me that, you have to be the leader that people want and they'll follow you. Unfortunately, the older way, and if you look at some of the global politics at the moment, it's sort of gone back. It's regressed a little in some respects. I'm about to go, actually, by the time the recordings come back, I'll be back from the US. So I'm safe to say that in case they're crawling all of my content as I go through the border. But yeah, I think that command and control, we all know when we don't like it. And but I do think having a distinct culture, it's like having a distinct positioning so the clients understand exactly the value, but also internally having that distinct positioning. So yeah, because people have got lots of choices, right? And especially the remote. Now it's a lot easier. You could work for any HubSpot partner in the world effectively remotely. So why are they going to pick you? So yeah, well done for the awards that you've won. And I know that I had Sarah McDevitt on the podcast recently, and I know that she interviewed you, and we'll have the links to that in the show notes as well, so you can sort of go into more about that. What we're going to do now is just finish with one. It's a big topic, but we'll try to wrap it up, is AI, right? We can't have a show without talking about AI. I know you've mentioned it a bit. Where do you see it playing out versus HubSpot with AI versus, people using more and more of the LLMs and agents and everything else that's coming? What's your little crystal ball of how you're seeing it playing out? It might be broader, it might be specific to education, whatever you choose.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting. I'd be in the wrong job if I didn't, to be honest. I think what's very interesting is that at the moment, if you as a HubSpot partner, we are going yes to AI. When we speak to our clients who are busy working in a school, nothing's really changed for them yet, right? And if you mention AI, you'll get one of two responses. Not for me. No, don't like it. You'll get defense.
Yes.
Again, understanding how psychology works, it goes a long way there to helping. Or you'll get, I use ChatGPT. I use it to write social posts, so I know AI. And that both are very valid.
Yes.
And I think it's excellent that people are using LLMs so easily. They're so easy to use that the adoption is very straightforward. I don't think we've seen this level of rapid tech adoption forever, probably. So that's exciting because, I mentioned before, you can have the Ferrari and no one's got the keys to the garage. Well, here you've got the Ferrari and everyone's running around with the keys going, get me in, or a lot of them. I think it's exciting. I think people are scratching the surface with, even if we just take something like ChatGPT or any other LLM, they're scratching the surface and they're enjoying it. I think the next evolution is realizing its true power. So one of the best things we've done was hooking up the connector with HubSpot and ChatGPT. So now I can, in one single text prompt, do a deep dive on any data from the entire company. So I can say, what's the biggest challenge faced by schools that look exactly like this in our onboarding process? And it can crunch that data, and in a matter of minutes, it has provided me with a deep insight. I think that's going to be something. And I think that's coming about the more that CRMs and the more that data is connected to LLMs, that's really exciting because we don't just need a great content writer and very agreeable thought partner. Instead, I think it's about going that next level, connecting up to your data and allowing it to draw them insights. So that I think is it's happening already. But that I think getting that adopted and your customers must see the value. If we fast forward a little bit beyond that, if I was to get my crystal ball out, let's go a year or dare I say 2, although who knows what the future will look like then. I really think that it's going to bring us back to human connection, because when the technology can do the stuff that has been causing the stress, the stuff that has been causing the friction, and the tech is just a given that it can do that, then what's left is a bunch of humans who might be a little bit worried about their jobs at times, who still care. We still are driven by purpose above anything, really. Sometimes money, but often tied to purpose. And so I really believe that it will, in the short term, it's going to just be a rapid race of people adopting it, and some will see incredible results very quickly. Others, depending on the culture they have and how easily they embrace change, will struggle. But I then think we get further ahead. People are going to really value human connection. If they've somewhat lost that along the way, I do think it's coming back. I can feel it already. And I think actually you'll see the short-term rush of businesses that will go really profitable very quickly because they're using AI well. That's amazing. And I very much celebrate that and want to do that. But I think the ones that sustain the journey longer are the ones that don't do that at the expense of humans, because that is the thing that AI can't replace.
Spot on. Yeah. And I think, I was lucky, like I said, in the Coke world, we had lots of data, and we were doing mining of customer data back in 2001. So, to me, it's like if someone we've got a friend that, used to just make up stats. Now he can't, because Google basically brought the reality to that conversation. It's like in the future we'll have all the data there, but it's the thinking that the data, what's not there currently. And that's what humans are uniquely able to do it as a species, is think. That's what makes us, or we've evolved to this. So I think that's the really exciting part. Instead of doing the 50% of admin, as HubSpot's always said in the job, all of a sudden if that's 10%, well, wow, what are the opportunities that lie ahead for us and our thinking? So I'm like you, I'm an optimist. I think it's a brilliant space, and let's watch this together. But what we'll do now is just pause for a moment, thank our sponsors, and then we'll come back with the rapid fire. Brilliant execution, terrible strategy. You can solve any client problem, but you're stuck in the same revenue patterns, same deal sizes, same time for money trap. I'm Paul, and I built and sold a 7-figure consulting business, but here's what I've learned mentoring other consultants. The real breakthroughs happen when you combine my experience with live problem solving of people going through exactly what you're facing now. In my group program, Steve works through his VA delegation challenge with Jed. Jed shares what's actually working. Andrew tests his pricing strategy with Casey, and Casey demonstrates his client onboarding system. Everyone's figuring it out together with my guidance based on what I learned the hard way. It's not theory, it's real-time strategic thinking with consultants in the trenches plus someone who's already made the journey. Stop grinding alone. Start thinking strategically. Go to paulhigginsmentoring.com/WWM. That's paulhigginsmentoring.com/WWM. Great. You ready for the rapid fire, Gemma?
Oh, I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. Well, speaking for hours, we're going to shift gears because it's one question, one simple answer at a time. So the first one is, we've talked about AI, HubSpot, etc., but what are some AI tools that you're using that have really blown you away of late?
Yeah, I think the one that's had the biggest impact, I referenced briefly, but is the connecting up ChatGPT with HubSpot. I think that's been one of the most powerful. And then I would also mention anything to do with AI in inboxes. I know the team are big looking at that at the minute.
Yeah, fantastic. And your go-to-market, I know that you started a lot with referrals, etc. You did those 80 blogs that drew people in, but what at the moment is really surprising you on what's working well from a go-to-market point of view?
Human connection. It really is. It's the greatest source. So it's referrals, but it's also just we go to events, we go to niche, very sector specific events. People will come to us and say, you know what you're talking about, and you're also really smiley, nice people. We want to work with you. And so I think events, but specifically the way we show up to events is powerful.
And where do you go to learn more about growing HubGem and your other businesses?
Yeah, so I tend to not read sort of typical business content. I do a lot more around psychology and the human mind. For me, most of the books I read and the podcasts I consume are about the brain, neuroscience, and intuition and all of that. And I think really that's taught me some of the best things that I've implemented in business.
Yeah, fantastic. The last but not the least, you've been doing this since 2019, and especially the private school or the independent school market in the UK is better off for it. But what do you know now that you wish you had have known back then?
I wish that I'd known that it's okay to not have all the answers and you don't have to control every outcome. I've really learned to trust the process, to become okay with failures along the way. And it's made me more resilient in life and work. If I look at the pressure I put on myself at the beginning to get it right, and there wasn't a right, there was just the process of, I do think it's one of them things that you learn with experience, but yeah, it would have made my life a lot easier if I'd known that from the start.
Yeah, and I often tell people you don't need to be the best in the world. You just need to be more one step ahead of the client that you're working with. So, if you're doubting yourself to step out like Gemma did, I think stop doing that. Take the inspiration from Gemma on the podcast today and go and do it. And you can find out more about Gemma at hubgem.co.uk. And also, is it intuitive.co?
Intuitive.co. And it's where I talk about my master intuitive psychology coaching, my company culture work.
Fantastic. Well, brilliant having you on today, Gemma. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
That was so much fun with Gemma. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. But there are some great lessons. One is stop trying to be everything to everyone. Gemma picked one vertical. She had the advantage of knowing it very well from the inside, but she solved a real problem and built systems that led her team to deliver without her. That's how you build a consulting business that expands beyond you. Reach out to Gemma Price on LinkedIn and thank her and ask her questions. You can tell that she's very open with the way that she's been so successful. You can learn more about her work at hubgen.co.uk. That'll be in the show notes, and also about her leadership coaching around intuition, which is intuitive.co. You can watch this episode on my YouTube channel, and please reach out to me. Let me know that you listen or you watch it. It's always brilliant when someone does, and I'd love for you to take that little step today. Just send me an email at paul@paulhigginsmentoring.com. I'll see you next time on my show, The Paul Higgins Podcast. What's your key takeaway from today? I'd love to hear. Want weekly insights on who to target and what to sell? Join my newsletter at paulhigginsmentoring.com/newsletter and share this with another tech consultant ready to escape the project grind.